Tonight, on Legislative Review, newly elected Governor Bob Ferguson's inaugural speech.
Thank you.
In response, Republican lawmakers share their perspective. From Olympia, this is Legislative Review.
Welcome and thanks for watching Legislative Review. I'm Angela Nolasco.
With resources superior to those of any other equal area, with a population as enterprising as it is courageous, there is no reason why the state of Washington should not in the near future rank amongst the most prominent states in the Union.
For the first time in 12 years, Washington State is ushering in a new governor, formerly known as Attorney General or the state's so-called top cop since 2013. Democratic Seattle native Bob Ferguson is ready to take the reins, going from Washington's 18th Attorney General to the state's 24th governor. In the morning of January 15th, a day after former Governor Jay Inslee delivered his last and final State of the State address, Ferguson addressed a full House chamber in his inaugural speech at a joint legislative session.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, everybody.
Acknowledging the state's known challenges, Ferguson said he's ready to buckle up for what's ahead. His approach, a quote, bias for action.
We face real challenges as a state and as a people. Our state is unaffordable for many Washingtonians. We rank 50th last per capita in number of law enforcement officers. Our ferry system, it's broken. We are confronted with a behavioral health crisis. Too many of our residents are unsheltered. Housing is too expensive, and there's not enough of it.
He claimed state government is bogged down by too much bureaucracy, threatening what he called core freedoms, such as reproductive rights.
Few things frustrate me more than bureaucracy that creates delays, confusion, or extra hurdles when people and businesses need questions answered and results delivered.
But to these challenges, he said he remains optimistic.
To meet these challenges, we cannot be leisurely when the times call for action.
Speaking to state legislators, Ferguson's call for action, bipartisanship.
Let us have a bias toward action. Let us listen to one another without consideration for party so that the strongest argument prevails.
Addressing each legislator, including Republicans, Ferguson vowed to sign their bill, saying he's ready to spread the work across the aisle to get legislative priorities done.
Senator Braun, I hope to work with you to adopt reasonable limits on the governor's emergency powers. We can do that together.
Among these priorities, free breakfast and lunch for K-12 schools, accessible home ownership for first responders, public safety programs, addressing the youth mental health crisis, and ensuring farmers receive their rebates from the Climate Commitment Act. The new governor also plans on addressing Washington's cost of living and housing crisis. Speaking on the multi-billion-dollar budget gap that state lawmakers are faced to resolve, Ferguson's request, transparency.
Let us work together to ensure that we correct some of the actions that brought us here. But let me start by saying that the era of assuming unrealistic growth in revenue is over.
He said he will not sign a budget that requires, quote, an unrealistic revenue growth to balance.
I will veto policy bills that defer major spending obligations more than 4 years after the legislation is adopted. These bills violate the spirit of Washington's requirement that state budgets be balanced over a 4-year period. We must be vigilant in assessing existing investments to determine whether they still make sense and whether they meet our priorities during a budget crisis.
Part of his budget proposal, $4 billion in savings, tacked on to those proposed in former Governor Inslee's budget. Regarding incoming President Trump's administration, Ferguson shared his perspective.
My administration will work with President Trump where we can. We will stand up to him when we must, and that most certainly includes protecting Washingtonians' reproductive freedom.
Following his speech, Governor Ferguson signed 3 executive orders. One, to direct the Department of Health to bolster legal protections around reproductive health. 2, to direct state agencies to review regulations on housing, permitting, and constructing new housing. And 3, to reform the current state agency permitting process to cut down permitting and license processing times. Before serving as Attorney General, Ferguson was a litigator, King County Council member, and state chess champion. Ahead of the session, he voiced his budget priorities, proposing a 6% budget cut to state agencies, and took an opposing stance against the wealth tax, which former Governor Jay Inslee supported.
While today marks the first day in office of a new governor, it also marks the 40th straight year of Democratic governors. Washington state Republicans are offering a bold agenda to take our state from the last to the first.
Following Governor Ferguson's inaugural address, state Republican lawmakers shared their collective perspective on the 2025 legislative session. Speaking on behalf of the caucus, newly elected Republican Representative Gloria Mendoza of the 14th Legislative District took the stage addressing issues like the state's rising cost of living, crime rates, and the housing and homelessness crises.
We are now the 4th most expensive state to live in, and Washingtonians pay among the highest prices in the nation for basic necessities like gas, groceries, and housing. We have the 3rd largest homeless population in the country. Washington is the 3rd most expensive state to buy a home. Despite record investment in childcare, 63% of children under 5 can't even access it. Problems that continue to get worse under a one-party politics.
Mendoza also mentioned Washington's quality of education, saying that the reality has become far worse among children in low-income families.
Over 60% of Washington students are failing to meet grade level standards in math, and 50% are failing to meet reading and writing standards.
She also mentioned the state's $10 billion operating budget deficit, criticizing majority Democrats' spending.
What has all this spending achieved? After spending $5 billion the last decade to combat homelessness, our state's chronic homeless population has increased by 530%.
Mendoza said the creation of new taxes to make up for the budget deficit will be too much on Washington's families.
Democratic leaders are proposing new taxes on our homes, our income, our jobs, and even on innovation itself, just to keep up the status quo. It doesn't have to be this way.
Proposing the Republican agenda, Mendoza said they first plan on toughening penalties for vehicle and organized retail theft.
Hey, Gary, he's still continuing eastbound. We'll stay on him and call it. You guys come back.
After the destructive defund the police movement, it is time to finally fund the police. We need to make Washington safe again. Our state ranks 1st for retail theft and 2nd for vehicle theft. These crimes not only hurt their victims, but ultimately affect all Washingtonians. Our state should be focused on protecting victims, not criminals.
As for the state's homeless crisis, Republicans are proposing more housing and behavioral health services.
Republicans want to remove homeless encampments near water, aquifers, schools, and parks. And we want to ensure that those who are unwilling to help themselves are steered into the appropriate detox or mental health facilities.
She said addressing Washington's drug crisis is also key, pointing to previous legislation to decriminalize certain drugs as a contributing cause to the problem.
Republicans have a plan to remove fentanyl from the streets by toughening penalties on manufacturers and dealers, while treating addiction by increasing the availability of drug treatment facilities.
Mendoza also said Republicans will zero in on boosting law enforcement.
Republicans want to provide hiring and retention incentives for local law enforcement, so our state will no longer be last in the nation in the number of police officers per capita.
Republicans are also proposing to eliminate taxes on prepared food, diapers, and other baby and maternity essentials. And in the area of K-12 education, to fund school districts with reading coaches in elementary schools, as well as apprenticeship opportunities to help students who are failing at school. Mendoza said that for the next 105 days, Republicans will prioritize affordable rent and home ownership, Washington's roads and ferry system, and access to clean energy without raising existing taxes or creating new ones. As for the incoming Trump administration, Mendoza had this to say to Washingtonians.
Yes, national issues matter, but your governor and state legislators were elected to fix problems in this Washington, not the other one. We are focused on policies that actually improve your lives in measurable ways. We have seen what 40 years of same-party governance has done to our state. And we hope you will join us in our mission to reclaim our standing as the best state in the nation.
Growing up in Yakima, Mendoza prides herself in being a mother, farmer, small business owner, and the first female mayor elected in Grandview, Yakima County.
And that's a wrap for this episode of Legislative Review. Join us nightly at 8 and 11 to keep up with what's happening in the legislature.